He was a man who could lose $10 million at a blackjack table and laugh. But on a Tuesday night in Vegas, a 26-year-old cocktail waitress did the one thing that made his blood run cold. She refused his money. This wasn't about a tip. It was a silent detonation in a world built on transactions, and with a single, defiant gesture, she unwittingly placed a bet with odds higher than any in the house. Her entire life. Her name was Elena Vance, a union server just trying to cover rent. His was Marcus Thorne, a self-made casino king who built an empire on reading people. In that glittering pit of human desire, her rejection was a cipher he couldn't solve. It posed a dangerous question. In a city that trades everything for a price, what is the one thing money cannot buy? To find the answer, he would design the ultimate test, a gamble where the chips were her future and the house was always watching. To understand the shockwave of that refusal, you must first understand the unspoken contract of the Vegas floor. For servers like Elena, a tip isn't a bonus. It's a lifeline, calculated to the decimal point against a base wage frozen in time since the year 1991. $2.13 an hour. Every smile, every carried tray, every endured leer is a transaction, a performance for survival. The house provides the stage, but the customers write the paycheck. This was the ecosystem Marcus Thorne mastered. He didn't just own the casino, he understood the metabolic rhythm of its desperation. He knew that a grand tipped to a waitress wasn't generosity, it was a leash. Marcus's empire, the Apex Real, wasn't built on luck. It was engineered. He arrived in Vegas in the late 90s, not with a bankroll, but with a psychology degree and a ruthless insight. People didn't come to gamble money. They came to gamble their self-worth. He designed every element of the Apex to exploit that. The oxygen pumped into the gambling floor was enriched to keep players alert. The maze-like layout prevented easy exits. The cocktail servers in their sleek uniforms weren't just service staff. They were psychological landmarks of generosity, a reminder that the house could afford to give. And every comp, every free drink, was a debt of gratitude meant to keep a player glued to their seat. Marcus's fortune was built on a single, immutable law: everyone has a price. Until a Tuesday night in October, when Elena Vance proved him wrong. Her shift started like any other, 10 p.m. to 6 a.m., the high-stakes whale-watching hours. The Apex's Opal Room was Marcus's sanctum, where the minimum bet was $5,000 and the clients were ghosts with nine-figure net worths. Elena had earned her spot there through seniority, and the union noted an impeccable record. No complaints, no mistakes, with drink orders for difficult patrons. She was a professional. That night, Marcus was hosting Li Chen, a reclusive tech billionaire known for his mercurial moods and a blackjack habit that could swing $20 million in an evening. Elena was assigned to his table. For 4 hours, she was a phantom of perfect service. Water glass never empty, scotch arriving before the ice melted, her presence a silent assurance. Li was on a heater, up nearly $7 million. In this world, that's when the real performance begins. Marcus watched from the mezzanine, a pane of one-way glass his throne. He saw Li, flushed with victory, scrawl something on a napkin and hand it to Elena with a dismissive wave. Standard procedure. A high roller's scribble was a chit for the casino cage, good for cash. Through his earpiece, Marcus heard the cage manager's voice. "Boss, you seeing this? Li just wrote a tip for $50K. Marcus allowed himself a thin smile. $50,000. It was a flamboyant gesture, a tiny fraction of Li's winnings, but for a server, it was a life-changing sum. It was the system working as designed. The whale feels like a king, the server is bound in grateful loyalty, and the house records the whole transaction as proof of its magnificent generosity. Then he watched Elena look at the napkin. He saw her back straighten, almost imperceptibly. She didn't smile. She leaned down, said a few quiet words to Li, and placed the napkin back on the felt beside his chips. Then she walked away. The Opal Room didn't have silence, but for Marcus Thorne, it descended like a vacuum. On his glass, he replayed the high-definition feed. He read her lips. "I appreciate the gesture, Mr. Chen, but I can't accept this. My service is included." Included. That was the union word. It was a clause in the contract, Article 7, that stated service was not a separate, negotiable commodity. It was a fundamental part of the job, compensated by the wage and the collective tipping pool. To Marcus, it was ideological poison. Li Chen was bewildered, then amused. He shrugged, pocketed the napkin, and went back to his cards. The moment was over for everyone but one man. Marcus felt a cold, intellectual fury. This wasn't defiance. It was a nullification. She had refused not just money, but the entire power dynamic he had spent his life perfecting. He summoned her personnel file to his screen. Elena Vance, age 26, hired 3 years ago, member of Culinary Union Local 226, clean record, pursuing a degree in accounting part-time at Nevada State, debt, approximately $78,000 in student loans. She lived in a union-subsidized apartment complex 15 minutes off the strip. The numbers told a story of grinding pressure. The $50,000 would have erased her debt and built a safety net. Yet she refused. Why? The psychologist in him was captivated. The capitalist in him was offended. He dug deeper into security logs, scheduling software. He found a pattern. Over the last 18 months, Elena had refused 3 other extravagant tips from high rollers. Each time it was handled quietly with the same phrase, "My service is included." The floor managers, not wanting to upset the whales or create a scene, had let it slide. A virus of integrity was spreading in his perfect system, and he hadn't even noticed. The union, it had to be the union. The culinary was the strongest counterforce to his authority on the strip. They negotiated the wages, the benefits, the service-included principle that gave a girl the audacity to refuse a king's ransom. They turned janitors into homeowners and cocktail servers into college graduates. They created a class of worker who could look a millionaire in the eye and feel not subservient, but equal in dignity. To Marcus, this was a direct challenge to his sovereignty. Elena Vance wasn't just a waitress. She was a soldier in a class war he was determined to win. He couldn't fire her. The union contract made that a logistical and public relations nightmare. But he could study her. He could test the limits of her supposed integrity. He formulated a hypothesis: everyone breaks. You just have to find the right pressure point. He would find hers. He started small. The next week, Elena was randomly selected for a mandatory training session on client appreciation techniques, a thinly veiled lecture on accepting gratuities gracefully. She sat through it, stone-faced. Then a scheduling error placed her on consecutive double shifts during finals week for her accounting class. She showed up, exhausted but flawless. Marcus watched, intrigued. Her resilience was a variable he hadn't fully calculated. He escalated. He instructed his most charming, relentless host, a man named Derek, to befriend her, to offer help, a connection to a paid internship at an accounting firm, a shortcut out of the uniform. Derek implied the opportunity came through Apex connections, a subtle hint of strings attached. Elena politely declined, saying she preferred to earn her opportunities. The feedback was relayed to Marcus: she's not for sale. This only deepened his obsession. He began to see her not as a problem, but as the ultimate puzzle. In a city of fabricated selves, she was apparently authentic. And in Marcus Thorne's experience, authentic people had one of 2 things: unshakable principles or a hidden price tag so large no one had yet found it. He decided to raise the stakes, to create a scenario where her integrity would face its most brutal opponent, not greed, but compassion. He needed a situation where saying no would hurt someone else. He reviewed the file on her family. Her younger brother, a mechanic, was deep in debt to a predatory lender after a failed business attempt. The collection notices were escalating. Marcus, through a series of untraceable shell companies, acquired the debt. He now owned her brother's financial despair. The stage was set. 2 weeks after the incident with Li Chen, Marcus orchestrated his masterpiece. He arranged for Elena to serve a private high-stakes poker game in the Apex's most secure suite. The players were 4 of his most discreet associates. The game itself was a fiction. The real action was the test. Midway through the night, a commotion erupted in the hallway. A man, playing the role of a drunken, aggressive patron, began verbally assaulting a young busboy, a new hire from Elena's same union hall. The script called for the man to shove the busboy, sending a tray of crystal glasses smashing onto the marble floor. The cost, $20,000 in damages. The drunk man, now playing sober and furious, pointed at the terrified busboy. "You're paying for that, kid. I'll have your job and sue you for every cent." Security arrived, but Marcus's orders were clear: let it play out. Watch Elena. She saw the panic in the young busboy's eyes. She knew the union would fight the termination, but the debt for the glasses could cripple him. As the scene unfolded, one of the poker players, an actor on Marcus's payroll, made his move. He pulled Elena aside, his voice a conspiratorial whisper. "Terrible situation. Look, I can make this go away. I'll cover the damages, call off the dog, all of it. He paused, letting the offer hang. All you have to do is bring a special bottle of cognac to our game next round. Don't ring it in, just let it disappear from the inventory. A tiny loss for the giant apex. A life changed for that boy. What's more important, Elena? Loyalty to a billionaire's stockroom or a kid's future? Elena stood in the plush hallway, the broken glass glittering at her feet like accusations. The busboy was crying. The poker player's eyes were steady, offering a terrible, elegant solution. Every fiber of her union training said to report the offer, to trust the process. But the process was slow, and the threat was now. Marcus watched from his office, his breath still. This was the crucible. Would her integrity bend to save another, or would it shatter, revealing the hypocrisy he suspected? Elena looked from the boy to the player, her face a mask of quiet torment. She opened her mouth to answer. Her answer was not what the poker player, or the man watching from the tower, expected. She did not take the deal, but she did not walk away either. Instead, Elena Vance performed a maneuver that redefined the entire battlefield. She looked the actor in the eye and said, loudly enough for the security cameras to catch every word, "The Apex is responsible for guest conduct and inventory. I will file an incident report with my union steward and security right now. The union's legal fund covers members against frivolous lawsuits for workplace accidents. We'll take care of him." Then she turned, helped the shaking busboy to his feet, and walked him straight to the security office, bypassing the staged drama entirely. She had used the system Marcus owned as a shield against his own test. In his office, Marcus Thorne didn't rage. He leaned back in his chair, a slow, dangerous smile spreading across his face. She hadn't broken, she had innovated. She had seen a rigged game and changed the rules. The psychologist in him was in awe. The capitalist now saw her not as a virus, but as a potentially priceless asset. If this level of strategic integrity could be harnessed, directed, it would be more valuable than any loyal yes-man. But first, he had to prove he could break it. To own something, you must first understand its failure point. He had escalated to compassion and failed. Now he would escalate to terror. He initiated phase 2. The next morning, Elena's brother, David, received a voicemail. The friendly, understanding tone of his debt collector was gone, replaced by a cold, automated message stating that due to immediate foreclosure on the loan's collateral, his tools and his truck, full payment was due in 72 hours, a sum of $41,000. Panicked, David called his sister. Elena heard the raw fear in his voice, the sound of a man watching his livelihood vanish. She emptied her savings account, a meager $8,000, and promised him she would find a way. She called the union's emergency assistance line. They could offer a small grant, but nothing close to the amount needed. For the first time, Elena felt the walls of her principled world closing in. This was not a test in a hallway. This was her family. Marcus watched the financial triggers fire in real time. He saw the withdrawal from her account, the call to the union. He allowed a week of frantic silence to pass. Then he had Derek, the charming host, approach her again. This time the offer was not subtle. "Elena, word gets around, I heard about your brother, brutal situation." Derek slid a plain white envelope across a cafeteria table. "This isn't from the Apex. This is from a private benefactor who admires your character. It's a check. It clears the debt. No strings, no payback, just help for a good person." Inside was a cashier's check for $41,000 drawn from a blind trust, the ultimate test of anonymous charity. If she took it, Marcus would have his proof. Everyone had a price, and his was simply higher. If she refused, she would be choosing her pride over her brother's survival. A moral torture device. Elena held the check. She imagined the relief on David's face, the end of the midnight phone calls. Then she imagined the unknown benefactor, the invisible hand holding the strings. In a city built on secrets, there was no such thing as no strings. She handed the envelope back. "Tell your benefactor thank you, but we'll manage through the union's resources." It was a bluff. The union couldn't cover it. But she was betting that the system of solidarity, however slow, was safer than the shadowy generosity of Vegas. Derek reported the refusal. Marcus, for the first time, felt a tremor of doubt. Was she a saint or a fool, or was she playing a deeper game he couldn't see? He decided to force her hand into the light. He instructed his legal department to draft a letter. It was addressed to Elena Vance, on official Apex Royale letterhead. It cited a routine audit that had discovered a significant inventory discrepancy in the Opal Room liquor stock, specifically several bottles of ultra-premium cognac matching the brand in his staged test. The letter stated that as the primary server assigned to that room during the audit period, she was a person of interest. It was a masterstroke of psychological pressure. It used her own refusal against her, framing it as premeditated guilt. The letter offered a choice: submit to a private meeting with loss prevention to clarify the matter, or have the case forwarded to the Las Vegas Metro Police and the Union for formal investigation. The threat was multi-layered: legal jeopardy, union scrutiny, and the public shattering of her impeccable reputation. Elena read the letter in the break room, her blood turning to ice. She knew she was innocent, but she also knew how this worked. A high-end casino accusing a server of theft was a career-ending allegation, regardless of truth. The union would defend her, but the stain would remain. The meeting was a trap, but not going was an admission of guilt. She was in a checkmate designed by a grandmaster. That night, she did something she had never done before. She called her union steward, a weary, sharp-eyed woman named Rita with 30 years on the strip, and she told her everything. The refused tips, the staged incident with the busboy, the mysterious check for her brother's debt, and now this letter. She laid out the pattern. Rita listened in silence, then said 5 words that changed everything. "Thorn is testing you, kid." Rita had seen it before, not this elaborate, but the principle was the same. Bosses trying to break the unbreakable workers to prove the union's principles were a fairy tale. "He wants to own you," Rita said, "not just your labor, your integrity. He wants to put it in a display case to prove he bought it. We can't let him." The union shifted from a defensive shield to an offensive weapon. Rita connected Elena with their research office, which began digging into the shell companies that owned David's debt. They pulled security logs, cross-referencing the actors in the poker game with known Thorn associates. The quiet war between the House and the Union had found its battlefield: Elena Vance. Elena walked into the meeting with loss prevention. The room was sterile, with a two-way mirror she knew Marcus was behind. 2 stern-faced men sat across from her. They laid out fabricated inventory reports. They implied witnesses. They offered her a compassionate exit, repay the missing inventory value, a sum of $80,000, and resign quietly with no police involvement. It was the final, blatant shakedown. Elena, following Rita's counsel, did not argue. She did not plead. She placed a small digital recorder on the table and pressed play. It was the clear audio of the poker player's offer in the hallway. "All you have to do is bring a special bottle of cognac, don't ring it in." Then she slid a single sheet of paper across the table. It was a printout of a corporate registration, tracing the ownership of her brother's debt through 3 hollow companies to a holding entity whose sole signatory was Marcus Thorn. The room went profoundly silent. She looked directly at the two-way mirror. "The game is over, Mr. Thorn, I see you." The door to the observation room opened. Marcus Thorn walked in, dismissing the 2 loss prevention men with a nod. He stood before Elena, not as a distant god, but as a confronted adversary. He was not angry. He looked intrigued, almost respectful. "You're costing me a lot of time and money, Miss Vance. You're trying to steal my dignity, Mr. Thorn. I'm just making it expensive," she replied. He laughed, a short, sharp sound. "What do you want? Name it." "A vice president of ethics, a 6-figure salary to be my conscience. You've won, you've proven your point, now let's monetize it." It was the most sincere offer he had ever made. He was offering her a seat at the table to change the system from within. It was the temptation not of money, but of real power to do good. Elena felt its pull. This was the offer that changed everything. But she remembered Rita's warning: "He doesn't want a partner, he wants a trophy." She stood up. "I want you to leave me and my family alone. I want my brother's debt erased, with all records destroyed. And I want a written, public apology from the Apex to the Union for this harassment." She was not negotiating for a job. She was negotiating for justice. Marcus's smile faded. This was not the script. She was supposed to want a reward, a promotion. She wanted restitution. He could not give that without admitting fault, without showing weakness. "That," he said slowly, "is the one thing I cannot do." The standoff was absolute. Elena had called his bluff, and he had revealed his true hand. His empire could not tolerate public capitulation. "Then we have nothing to talk about," Elena said and walked out. She had won the battle of wills, but she had just started a war with a man who had nothing left to lose but his pride. And in Vegas, pride is the most dangerous currency of all. The retaliation was swift and brutal. The following day, Elena was suspended pending a comprehensive review of the inventory allegations. The union filed an immediate grievance, but the process was slow. Worse, a smear campaign began in the shadowy online forums frequented by industry insiders. Whispers that Elena was a problem employee, that she had stolen from other jobs, that she was leveraging false accusations for a payout. Her reputation, her most valuable asset, was under attack. Then the final blow landed. David called, sobbing. The debt collector had not been satisfied with the refusal of the check. Men had shown up at his garage. They hadn't touched him. They had simply, methodically, taken every tool from his boxes, loaded them into a van, and driven away. His truck was next. The loan was in default. The leverage was no longer financial. It was visceral. Elena sat in her small apartment, the glamour of the Strip feeling like a distant, mocking dream. The union was fighting, but it was a war of attrition. Marcus could throw lawyers and private investigators at this forever. She was a single woman against a machine. That night Rita called. "The research team found something else," she said, her voice tense. "When we were tracing the debt, we found a link to an old case. A server at the Apex 7 years ago, a woman named Chloe. She also refused a massive tip from a high roller. She also got tested. She didn't have a union rep like me. She took a different deal." Elena's breath caught. "What deal?" Thorne offered her a management training position. She accepted. 6 months later, she was arrested for embezzling $200,000 from the casino's charity fund. The evidence was overwhelming. She went to prison. She got out last year. Rita paused. "Elena, the shell company that prosecuted her. It's the same one that owns your brother's debt. Marcus Thorne doesn't just test integrity, he manufactures the fall of those who pass." The revelation was a physical shock. This wasn't a game. It was a pattern, a sport. Marcus Thorne hunted integrity the way other men hunted big game, and when he couldn't break it, he framed it and mounted it on his wall. Chloe's story was the blueprint for her own. The inventory allegation, the police threat, it was all heading toward the same destination, not just her firing, but her destruction. To save herself, she needed to do the one thing she had refused from the beginning. She needed to beat Marcus Thorne at his own game. She needed to outplay the master player. But to do that, she would have to step onto his moral chessboard and use his own pieces against him. She would have to make him an offer he couldn't refuse. Elena's research led her to a weathered apartment complex in North Las Vegas and a woman named Chloe, who answered the door with the hollow-eyed gaze of someone who had been broken by the very machine Elena was fighting. Over bitter coffee, the story poured out. 7 years ago, Chloe was a star bartender at the Apex. Marcus Thorne, then still solidifying his power, tested her with a similar offer after she refused a tip from a notorious cheater he wanted to ban. "He said he needed people with moral fiber in management," Chloe whispered, her hands trembling around her mug. "I was naive. I thought I could change things from the inside." The promotion was a honeypot. She was given access to sensitive accounts, including the casino's charitable foundation. Then the trap sprung. Falsified invoices, doctored signatures, a paper trail that led directly to her. She was arrested in front of her team. The public defender said the evidence was irrefutable. She took a plea deal, 2 years in prison. "The worst part," Chloe said, looking at Elena with pity, "was that after I got out, I realized the charity fund itself was a shell. It wasn't for donations. It was a slush fund for bribing state gaming commissioners. I wasn't framed for stealing. I was framed for discovering the real theft." The revelation was a seismic shift. Marcus Thorne wasn't just a manipulative billionaire. He was a criminal who used the facade of corporate integrity to hide systemic corruption. His tests were a filtering system. Those who failed were discarded. Those who passed were either recruited into the corruption, or if they refused like Chloe, were set up as sacrificial lambs to take the fall for it. Elena was being groomed for the same fate. The inventory allegation was just the opening move. The endgame was a prison cell, with her reputation as the cover story for a larger crime. She thanked Chloe, who grabbed her wrist at the door. "He has people everywhere, Elena. In the union office, in the police department. You can't trust anyone." Elena drove home, the neon glow of the Strip now looking like the lights of a prison yard. She met with Rita the next day, laying out Chloe's testimony. The union steward's face grew grim. "This is bigger than a labor dispute. This is RICO, the Racketeer Influenced and Corrupt Organizations Act. But to trigger a federal investigation, they needed more than the testimony of a convicted felon. They needed hard evidence from inside the Apex's financial fortress, and they needed it before Marcus could complete his frame job on Alina. Rita made a decision. The union had a secret asset, a former Apex IT director named Leo, who had been forced out after questioning some accounting irregularities. He was protected by the union's whistleblower fund. Leo was their backdoor into the system. The plan was audacious: use Alina's suspended status as cover. She would publicly play the desperate employee willing to finally negotiate with Thorne to drop the charges. In that negotiation, she would demand a specific concession, a temporary, limited reinstatement to a different department, say, the accounting office for the charity foundation, to rebuild trust. It was the one role Marcus might believe she would covet, a clean, white-collar escape from the floor. If he bit, Leo would provide her with the digital keys to find the real evidence. Alina made the call to Derek, the ever-present intermediary. Her voice was carefully frayed with fear and exhaustion. "I want to talk. I can't fight this anymore." The meeting was set in a neutral location, a private dining room at a restaurant Marcus owned indirectly. He arrived, expecting a surrendered opponent. Alina laid out her terms: drop the inventory investigation, clear her name internally, and transfer her to a junior analyst role in the Foundation's office, away from the scrutiny of the casino floor. In exchange, she would sign a strict NDA and resign from the union's grievance process. She presented it not as a victory, but as a dignified retreat. Marcus studied her. He saw the dark circles, the subdued posture. He saw what he wanted to see: breaking point. To him, it was the final, satisfying proof. Everyone had a price. Hers was a quiet office and a saved face. He agreed on the spot. The Foundation office was a backwater, he thought, a harmless place to park her while the final stages of the frame-up proceeded. He had won. 2 days later, Alina Vance walked into the Apex Real not in a server's uniform, but in business attire, her employee badge reactivated with a new, insignificant title. For 2 weeks, she was the model employee. She processed mundane invoices, attended pointless meetings, and made no waves. Meanwhile, Leo, working from a secure location, guided her through a series of seemingly innocent actions, running standard reports, accessing archived files for audit preparation. Each action planted a digital tracer, a snippet of code that, when combined, created a ghost login with elevated privileges. It was a slow, careful digital heist. The target was the Foundation's server, which was air-gapped from the main casino network for security. The night of the extraction, Alina stayed late, citing a backlog. Her heart hammered against her ribs as she executed Leo's final script. The server's defenses, designed to keep regulators out, were vulnerable to an inside login with the right keys. She accessed the true ledger. What she saw stole the breath from her lungs. It wasn't just bribes to gaming commissioners. It was a detailed map of a money laundering operation of staggering scale. The Apex Foundation was washing tens of millions for international syndicates, using fake charitable events and inflated vendor contracts. The records implicated not just Marcus, but a city councilman, a judge, and the very head of the state's Gaming Control Board's enforcement division. Chloe had only seen the tip of the iceberg. Alina was looking at the whole, corrupted glacier. She downloaded everything. The data streamed onto an encrypted drive Leo had provided. As the progress bar filled, she heard a noise in the hallway. The cleaning crew shouldn't be here for another hour. She quickly closed the programs, pulled the drive, and hid it in the lining of her purse. The door to the office opened. It wasn't a cleaner. It was Derek, flanked by 2 men from Apex Security. His friendly facade was gone. Evening, Alina, working late. Eyes scanned her desk, the computer monitor. Mr. Thorne received an alert about unauthorized access on the Foundation server. From this terminal, the system had a hidden tripwire she and Leo hadn't accounted for. The trap had been inside the trap. "I was just running the quarterly donation summaries," she said, her voice steady despite the cold fear. Derek smiled thinly. "We'll see. We need to check your belongings, corporate policy." They were going to find the drive. Everything was for nothing. As one guard approached, the main office lights suddenly cut out, plunging the room into darkness, save for the emergency exit signs. A voice, electronically distorted, boomed from the ceiling intercom: "Fire alarm. Evacuate immediately. Proceed to the nearest exit." It was Leo, creating a diversion from the outside. In the confusion of flashing strobes and the blaring alarm, Alina didn't hesitate. She shoved past the disoriented guard, sprinted out the door, and into the chaotic stream of evacuating employees from other floors. She melted into the crowd, descending 20 flights of stairs and bursting out into the warm night air amidst hundreds of confused people. She didn't look back. She walked, then ran, then hailed a cab 5 blocks away. She had the evidence. But Marcus now knew she had it. The chessboard had been flipped over. The quiet war had just gone hot. She went straight to Rita's house, not the Union Hall. They plugged the drive into a secure laptop. As they scrolled through the files, Rita's face paled. This isn't just a win for us. This is a citywide scandal. If we go public with this, they won't just come after Thorne, they'll come after us. The forces implicated were too powerful, too embedded. A standard leak to the press would be buried, discredited. The Union needed a bigger, unstoppable ally. Rita made a call. The next morning, Elena found herself in a bland federal office building in downtown Las Vegas, sitting across from 2 impassive agents from the Financial Crimes Enforcement Network, a division of the U.S. Treasury. They had been building a case on the Apex's international partners for months, but lacked the domestic link. Elena's evidence was the missing piece. They offered her a deal, full federal witness protection for her and her family, in exchange for her testimony and her continued, monitored role. They wanted her to go back. The plan was breathtakingly dangerous. Elena would return to work the next day as if nothing had happened. She would claim she got spooked by the fire alarm and left. She would apologize. She would act defeated. Meanwhile, she would wear a wire. The feds would orchestrate a series of meetings where Marcus, believing he had her cornered, would incriminate himself while trying to either recruit her into the conspiracy or threaten her into silence. It was the only way to get evidence admissible in court. Elena looked at the photo of her brother they provided, already in a safe house. She thought of Chloe's hollow eyes. She said yes. She walked back into the lion's den, but this time, the lion was being watched by hunters with sniper rifles. Her first day back, she was summoned to Marcus's private office at the top of the Apex. The view was spectacular, a kingdom of light he believed he owned. He didn't mention the server. He poured 2 glasses of water. "You're a remarkable puzzle, Elena," he said. "Most people, when they find a door locked, they walk away. You seem to find a window, climb through, and then politely inform me the lock was cheap." He was toying with her, confident the window was now barred. "I just want my job back on the floor, Mr. Thorne. The office, it's not for me." She played her part, the chastened worker who realized her place. He studied her, and for a fleeting second, she saw a flicker of something in his eyes, not suspicion, but a strange disappointment. As if he had hoped, against all odds, that she really was incorruptible. Then it vanished, replaced by cool calculation. "The floor is yours, but we have a new policy for the Opal Room. All tips go through a centralized clearing house. For tax purposes, of course." He had created a system to make her refusal impossible, to bureaucratize the very act of generosity into a corporate transaction. It was his final, petty victory. "Of course," Elena said, the wire hidden in her bra feeling like a live coal against her skin. She had her access back. The stage for the final act was set. But as she left his office, she realized the terrifying truth. To bring down the king, she would have to get so close he could see his own reflection in her eyes. For 3 weeks, Elena played her part perfectly. She served in the Opal Room, her every move monitored by federal agents in a van 2 blocks away. The wire became a second skin, and she waited for Marcus Thorne to make the one mistake she knew was inevitable. He would try to own her one last time. The trigger came from an unlikely source. Li Chen, the tech billionaire, returned to the Apex. He requested Elena specifically. When she arrived at his table, he didn't mention the $50,000 tip. Instead, he slid a business card across the felt. It was for the CFO of his green energy company. "My people tell me you're studying accounting. You have integrity in a town that bleeds it. I need that. When you're done here, call this number." It was a real, clean, external offer. And Marcus, watching from his perch, saw it as the ultimate betrayal. His asset was being poached. He summoned her to his office after her shift. This time, the friendly paternalism was gone. The room was dark, the city lights twinkling like fallen stars behind him. "Sit," he commanded. Elena complied, the wire humming silently. "Mr. Chen seems impressed," Marcus began, pouring a drink he didn't offer her. "He thinks you have a future beyond carrying trays. He's wrong, of course. Your future is here. I built this future. I decide who thrives in it." He was circling, his ego bruised. "I'm grateful for my job, Mr. Thorne," Elena said, keeping her eyes lowered. No, you're not, he snapped, his control slipping. You're grateful for nothing. You think you're better than this place, than me. You think your little principles are a shield. They're not, they're a target. He leaned on his desk, looming over her. Let me explain your future to you. You will decline Mr. Chen's offer. You will sign a new 5-year exclusivity contract with the Apex. And you will do one more thing for me. This was it, the incrimination. Elena kept her voice small. What thing? Marcus smiled, a cold, victorious thing. The Foundation books need tidying. The State Gaming Board is asking inconvenient questions. You have access, you have the accounting mind. You will create a new set of ledgers for the last fiscal year, clean ones, and in return I will not only make your brother's debt disappear, I will make him a partner in a new garage, a real one. You'll have your integrity, Elena. And he'll have his life back. Everyone wins. He was offering her the core of the crime, the cover-up. He was asking her to become Chloe. In the federal van, agents leaned forward, headphones clamped to their ears. They had him on solicitation to commit fraud, obstruction of justice, and witness tampering, but they needed more. They needed the money trail. Elena, following their prearranged script, showed a flicker of tempted hesitation. How would it work? The ledgers? Marcus, believing he had finally hooked her, grew expansive. He walked her through it, detailing how the fake charitable donations would be rerouted through a shell company called Midas Holdings, and from there to the offshore accounts of the compromised gaming commissioner. He named names. He mentioned amounts. He laid out the entire conspiracy with the clarity of a proud architect. For 20 minutes, he dictated his own indictment. When he finished, he looked at her, expecting to see gratitude or at least submission. Elena met his gaze, and for the first time she let him see the steel beneath. I need to think about it, she said. You have until tomorrow, Marcus replied, dismissing her. He thought he was giving her a deadline. He was giving the feds time to get warrants. At 3 the next afternoon, as the afternoon high roller crowd began to trickle into the Apex Real, it happened. Not with a dramatic smash of doors, but with a quiet, terrifying efficiency. Teams of federal agents in windbreakers emblazoned with FINCEN, FBI, and IRS moved through the casino floor. They didn't head for the cash cages. They went straight to the executive offices, the Foundation wing, and the server room. Simultaneously, state police cars pulled up to the homes of the city councilman and the head of the Gaming Control Board's enforcement division. The coordinated raid was a silent earthquake. On the Opal Room floor, Elena was serving a drink when she saw Derek being escorted out in handcuffs, his face ashen. The music played on, but the room froze, a tableau of shock. Marcus Thorne was in his office when the agents entered. He was on the phone with his lawyer, already aware something was wrong from the alerts on his security monitors. He didn't resist. He simply hung up the phone, stood, and offered his wrists. As they led him out through the bustling casino, a path cleared. Hundreds of employees and patrons watched in stunned silence. His eyes scanned the crowd, and they found Elena. She was standing by a roulette table, tray in hand, watching him. There was no smile of triumph on her face, just a calm, profound exhaustion. In that moment, he understood. He stopped, forcing the agents to halt. He looked at her, and he didn't see a defeated waitress. He saw the architect of his ruin. He nodded once, a strange, grudging acknowledgement. Then he was led away, the king dethroned by the servant who refused to kneel. The aftermath was a media hurricane. Apex empire crumbles in federal corruption sweep. Server turned whistleblower topples casino king. Elena, her brother David, and Rita from the Union were swept into a vortex of depositions, grand jury testimonies, and security details. The evidence was overwhelming. Marcus Thorne, the councilman, the judge, and the gaming commissioner were indicted on 74 counts, including racketeering, money laundering, and bribery. The Apex Real was placed under federal receivership. The union used the moment to negotiate a landmark new contract across the Strip, eliminating the subminimum tipped wage for all its members and installing unprecedented ethical oversight committees. Elena Vance had not just won her fight, she had changed the rules of the game for 60,000 workers. When the trials concluded and the headlines faded, Elena faced the question of her own future. Li Chen's offer was still open. The federal witness protection program was an option, though with Thorne in custody, the threat was diminished. She had a substantial financial settlement from the federal whistleblower program, a reward for the millions in fines and recovered assets her evidence had triggered. 1 year to the day after the raid, she made her decision. She did not take the corporate job. She did not disappear. She walked into the storefront office of the Culinary Union Academy the training wing Rita had told her about. She sat down with the director and presented a proposal. She would fund a new program, not for bartending or dealing, but for financial literacy and forensic accounting for hospitality workers. She would teach them to read the ledgers of power, to protect themselves, to be their own first line of defense. The program would be named after Chloe. The final surprising detail came from an envelope delivered to her new union office. It contained no note, only a single vintage casino chip from the long-defunct Sands Hotel and a key. The key was for a safe deposit box. Inside, Elena found a stack of old journals. They were Marcus Thorne's from his early days in Vegas. Skimming through them, she found a passage circled. It read, "The house always wins because it understands the value of everything. Except the one thing it can't price. The person who says no, that person is not a loser. They are a glitch in the system, and glitches either corrupt the program or they force an upgrade." He had written it 2 decades ago. He had spent a fortune trying to prove the former. Elena had become the latter. She closed the box. She kept the chip. Today, Elena Vance still lives in Las Vegas. She teaches her classes at the Union Hall. Her brother runs a successful auto shop, debt-free. The Apex Royale, under new ownership and a new name, has the strongest union contract on the Strip. And if you walk its floors, you'll see a small, discreet plaque near the entrance to the high-limit room. It doesn't bear a name. It simply reads, "Service included." The story of the cocktail waitress who refused a tip and brought down a kingdom ends not with a dramatic shootout, but with a quiet revolution. She proved that in a city built on chance, the most powerful bet you can make is on yourself, and that sometimes the only way to win a rigged game is to refuse to play by the house rules and build a new table entirely. So what is the real price of a principle? For Marcus Thorne, it was his empire, his freedom, and the chilling realization that the foundation of his power was a lie he had sold to himself. For Elena Vance, it was a year of terror, the weight of a city's corruption on her shoulders, and ultimately a freedom far greater than any tip could buy. But this story transcends one casino and one waitress. It is a fracture in the mirror we hold up to American hustle culture. We celebrate the self-made billionaire, the disruptive innovator. But what about the dignity of the person who serves them? A dignity so solid it can refuse a king's ransom. The practice of tipping, as we learned, was born from a system designed to keep people subservient, to make gratitude a currency for survival. For over a century, that dynamic held. Then along comes a worker, backed by collective solidarity, who looks at the script and says, "No, thank you." Her refusal wasn't rudeness. It was a recalibration of value. She was saying, "My worth is not an open bid. It is inherent." In that moment, the entire psychological architecture of transactional power, the one that fuels not just casinos, but countless industries, trembled. Elena's victory wasn't that she became rich or powerful in the traditional sense. It was that she redefined what power could be. Power became the ability to teach others to read the hidden ledgers of their lives. Power became transforming a symbol of exploitation into a plaque that says, "Service included." She didn't climb the ladder Thorne built. She showed that the ladder was leaning against the wrong wall. The most dangerous person in any room is not the one with the most chips. It is the one who cannot be bought because they have already purchased their own soul, and the receipt is non-refundable. This leaves us with a lingering, uncomfortable question. How many of us, in our own lives, are accepting tips when we should be demanding a rightful wage? How many are playing a rigged game, smiling and saying thank you because the alternative seems too frightening? Elena's story suggests the alternative isn't just possible, it's the only way the game ever really changes. It begins with a simple, terrifying, liberating act, pushing the money back. If you found this journey from the casino floor to the courtroom compelling, if you believe stories about integrity beating greed are worth telling, then do me a favor. Hit that like button, it truly helps this channel. Share this with someone who needs a reminder of their own worth. And subscribe, because every week we dive into another true story that dissects the hidden mechanics of power, money, and the choices that define us. Thanks for listening.